The New York Islanders give a subpar effort and get a subpar result. They are blanked by the Rangers 4-0. Is there anything left to do but sell? We're going to talk about that and what this team can do to make the future brighter coming up next on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Tuesday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. I'm Gil Martin. I have been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the New York Rangers, going all the way back to 1972 until the modern era. So glad you could join us to talk a little Islanders hockey during this critical week for this franchise. We're going to talk about last night's loss to the Rangers. We're going to talk about its impact on the trade deadline and how this team can make the future brighter, and we'll preview tonight's game against the Winnipeg Jets. All that and more coming up on today's show. Let's start with the obvious, a 4-0 loss against the Rangers at Madison Square Garden. And look, I don't think you need to be a rocket scientist coming into this game to say, the New York Islanders should have been extremely desperate under the circumstances, that they really, truly needed to come out and play the kind of game they needed to, they needed to win. And if they had any faint hopes of making the playoffs, they needed the 2 points. And look, they didn't get any help on the scoreboard. Montreal won. Ottawa got a point by coming back to lose in a shootout. And the hopes for the wild card are rapidly fading, with the Islanders now 5 points back, but just too many teams to try to leapfrog at this point. And I don't see how they're going to be able to leapfrog all of the teams they need to leapfrog, which right now would be 6 other teams in order to make the playoffs. And the disappointing thing about this game was really the lack of urgency. And you look at the final game stats, and here is the one that kind of jumped out at me. The New York Islanders finished this game with 20 shots on goal. The Rangers blocked 22 shots. Ask yourself, based on that stat alone, which team wanted this game more? The Islanders' offense was disjointed. They had difficulty putting 2 good passes together. And out of the 20 shots on goal, how many of them were second chance opportunities, rebounds, deflections? How many times did the Islanders have extended zone time with multiple shots? I can't remember many off the top of my head. Okay, I can't remember any off the top of my head. And they just did not play a solid, strong, smart hockey game. And yeah, Anders Lee had a goal in the first period that was wiped out by a review. The play was offside. It was indeed the right call. Close, but it was the right call. But realistically, I don't think there was any doubt as to which team was the better team. And again, the Islanders' power play does not score in this game, 0 for 3. Gave up a shorthanded goal, which you can't afford to do. Okay, the first Ranger goal, yeah, it was fluky. Goes in off Will Coyle's head when he's just trying to get out of the way. But I think it goes back to the old adage, good things happen when you put the puck on the net, when you go to the net. This team just didn't have it. And look, I give Patrick Waugh a little bit of credit for one thing. The Islanders benched Anthony Duclair. He was a healthy scratch. So was Pierre Engvall. So was Scott Perunovich. They ended up going with 11 forwards and 7 defensemen. It didn't really help. But, did Anthony Duclair deserve to sit? He's probably deserved to sit several times already. The problem with this team right now is he's not alone. Like, you could take turns. Engvall deserves to sit. Duclair deserves to sit. Dobson isn't playing particularly well. Mayfield has struggled since his return from the injury. He was back in the lineup. Too many games. Kyle McLean has been invisible. Maxim Siplikov hasn't played well since the Four Nations break. Casey Cizikas has been invisible. There are a lot of guys on this team who deserve to sit. And when you break it all down, that just means there are too many passengers. Ilya Sorokin, he was okay. I can't say, look, the first goal, as I said, was a fluke. The second goal was just a great shot. One of them was an empty netter. I don't think he gave up, any particularly egregious goals. But it just wasn't good enough. And I'll sum it up this way. This performance is not the performance of a playoff team, let alone a team that could win if they get in. And it's not like the New York Rangers, no offense to them. Not that I think I could offend the Rangers to Islander fans, but I just think the New York Rangers are not an elite team this year. They're a team like the Islanders who have been struggling and disappointing all year long. They're ahead of the Islanders in the standings now by a little bit more than they were, coming into this game. The Rangers are now extending their lead over the Islanders, but realistically, these are two teams on the outside looking in the Eastern Conference who desperately needed points. And only one team really played a game with a lot of desperation, and it wasn't the New York Islanders. And, it just, from beginning to end, was not good enough. It just wasn't good enough. And if I were to try to do the hero and go to the game, I don't have a hero. I mean, who stood out in this game as really playing well? I mean, could I give it to Anders Lee for the goal that didn't count? Can't really say that. There really were no heroes in this game. I mean, Alexander Romanov had 4 block shots. Only Kyle Palmieri had more than 2 shots on goal among all the Islanders in this game. The guys who you were counting on most right now, Bo Horvat, 1 shot on goal. Brock Nelson, 1 shot on goal. Siplikov, 1 shot on goal. Palmieri had 3, but he was a -4, which means he was on the ice for all 4 Ranger goals. Brock Nelson and Simon Holmstrom were -3. Go to the game. I mean, where do you go? I think the whole team has to be considered the GOAT because the urgency that you need in this situation, it just didn't appear to be there, and it needs to be there. So let's take a step back and understand that heading into tonight's game against the Winnipeg Jets, the Islanders have now lost 5 of their last 7. You follow up a 7-game winning streak by losing 5 of your next 7. It's just not a playoff team. And there are too many things going wrong right now to fix or to think that this core, which hasn't won a playoff series in 3 years, and this will make 4, is going to all of a sudden come back and become a kick-butt hockey team. This season, the competitive part of this season is over. And now the question is, how do you salvage the rest of this year to make things better for the future? We're going to talk about that, what the Islanders can and should do at the trade deadline. We're going to preview tonight's game against the Jets. And for our Islanders' birthday of the day, a defenseman who had 2 stints with the New York Islanders and suffered a serious eye injury that really affected his career. Let's see if you can guess who that is. I think that's a pretty easy one. We've got all that and more next on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better-for-you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no-shells variety. It's the perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost, they're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Get Wonderful Pistachios. Go to wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. That's wonderfulpistachios.com. It's over. This season is not going to end with a playoff berth. There just isn't room right now to say realistically that the New York Islanders have it in them to make the playoffs. Why? Again, you look at the standings. The Rangers and Red Wings right now have 66 points. Now, the Red Wings have a game in hand, so technically they are wild card 2 right now, and technically the Islanders are only 5 points back. But as I mentioned, they have to pass 6 teams in order to make the playoffs. Teams that are ahead of the Islanders in the standings, like Montreal and Boston, are both talking about selling. This is, right now, according to everybody around the NHL, a seller's market. Because of the logjam in the East, and because some of the teams even in the West are kind of hanging around in the playoff race, there's only a handful of teams that are legitimately all-out sellers. The New York Islanders have 2 players who are on expiring contracts in Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri, who would each get big returns. If you look at the deals that have been made so far, the Islanders would do really well at the trade deadline if they move on from these players. And it isn't just the 2 of them. Let's be honest. You have a glut of defensemen right now. Whether you want to try to sell, some of the guys like Tony DeAngelo, or if you can move Scott Mayfield. I know that will be hard because of the terrible contract that Lou Lamoriello gave him, 7 years with 5 years plus left. The number, the cap hit itself isn't terrible, but boy, who wants to lock in a guy on the wrong side of 30 for 5+ years? So that's tough to move on from. But there are players on the blue line: Scott Perunovich, Adam Boqvist, Tony DeAngelo probably has more value than either one of them. J.G. Pageau, the kind of guy who can really help the right team at the playoffs. 1 year left on his contract. You can move him. Do you dare trade Noah Dobson? I wouldn't be eager to, but boy, if somebody bowls me over with a great offer, I'm listening. Anders Lee, value never going to be higher, getting up there in years, not worth, even this year with his better performance, he's not playing at a $7 million a year cap hit level. If you can move on from Anders Lee, do it. Can you move either Ryan Polak or Adam Pelech? They're both injured a lot. They both have not played up to their standards in the last couple of years. Can you move on from Casey Cizikas? Is there a team out there willing to take him? I don't know if anyone would touch Pierre Engvall's contract, but if you can get something for him, go for it. There are opportunities here to add younger, faster players, prospects, draft picks to get this organization, which is ranked 25th in prospect pool around the league, according to The Athletic, and that's up from 32nd a year ago. But none of the prospects this team has are going to be ready for at least another couple of years, 2-3 years, and that's if they pan out at all. This is your opportunity, and your chances of making the playoffs right now are probably somewhere around 12 to 15%, and that's just to get in. There is no rational excuse anymore. You could talk about injuries, you could talk about bad luck, you could talk about all kinds of things. But no, 1,000 times no. And I'll take it a step further. We know right now, Semyon Varlamov probably done for the year. Not confirmed, but a lot of rumors out there that Varley is just done. Marcus Hogberg, he's skating, but he still isn't facing shots in practice. Can't say he's going to be ready right away. The team does not believe Jakub Skarek is a realistic backup goalie. But you know what? At this point in time, I would not trade for a backup goalie. You're not making the playoffs this year. If Hogberg comes back, I'd let him be the backup the rest of the season. If not, go with Skarek. Go with Tristan Lennox. Call up whoever. Find a goalie on waivers if somebody becomes available. But do not, under any circumstances, give up an asset to get a temporary backup goalie. Unless doing that will allow another team to take a Pierre Engvall or a Scott Mayfield or, some player who it's tough to get rid of because of their contract off your hands. If you want to do that, but that's unrealistic. This team right now, there are just too many guys struggling. As I said, everydayers, we've talked about Anthony Duclair possibly needing to be a scratch at some point. And last night they scratched him. And you know what? The problem is not that they waited so long to scratch Anthony Duclair, and I give Duke credit. He's trying. He's playing hurt. But the issue is that there are 5 or 6 guys on any given night who deserve to be a healthy scratch the next game. There's too many guys who fit that description. And when that's the case, it is very, very difficult to have accountability when there's nobody waiting to take over. So use this trade deadline to get younger, faster, and more skilled, and get more guys in there who are hungry and who can be held accountable. This is a veteran team, the way it's put together right now. There is no excuse for a veteran team that has been through the wars, the way this team has been through the wars, to not be playing with urgency. The players know this season is not going to end with a playoff berth. And if they don't, they're sure as heck doing a good imitation of a team that knows it. There is no rational excuse left not to sell as many guys as you can to make this team better. You face a situation now where either you can stand pat and watch this retool become a long, ugly San Jose Sharks / Chicago Blackhawks style rebuild, where 5, 6, 7 years down the road, you're hoping everything breaks right. You win a draft lottery. You get that generational talent. You start to build around that player. That takes a long time. Or you take one step back to take 2 steps forward, and you salvage the prime of Matthew Barzal, Ilya Sorokin, and Bo Horvat. Those are your 3 core guys who you can build around. If you have to go into a full rebuild because Lou Lamoriello doesn't take advantage of this opportunity at the trade deadline when all the stars are lining up in his favor to sell, you're wasting the primes of your best players. And it is just terrible asset management. And Lou Lamoriello isn't stupid. He's stubborn, but he's not stupid. Lou, prove it to me. Prove to me that you know there is a time to be aggressive and there is a time to retool. And now is the time to retool. We have got a lot more to get to. The Islanders have a back-to-back facing the Winnipeg Jets tonight. We have that, a preview of that game, plus our Islanders birthday of the day coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. The Islanders returning home, facing the Winnipeg Jets in their last game before the trade deadline. 7:30 Eastern time start. And Winnipeg, boy, they are one of the best, if not the best team in the league. They are in first place in the Central Division. They are 42-15-4, 88 points. And look, they've lost their last 2. Yeah, one of them was in a shootout. So they're 0-1-1 in their last 2. But that came after an 11-game winning streak. They've got arguably the best goalie in the game with Connor Hellebuck. The numbers speak for themselves. 36 wins, 7 losses, 3 overtime losses. A .927 save percentage, 6 shutouts, a 1.99 goals against average. You might as well hand Hellebuck the Vezina right now. They have 2 30-goal scorers already, and we still have 21 games left in their season. You have Mark Scheifele with 34, Kyle Connor with 31, Gabriel Velarde has 26. This is a team that is coming into this game rested. You want to know how good the Winnipeg Jets are? Second in the league in goals scored, first in the league in goals against, number 1 in the league on the power play, 30.5%. The penalty kill is only 14th in the league, 79.5%. This is a darn good hockey team. The line combination, Scheifele, Connor, and Velarde are the top trio. Vladislav Nemestikov centers the second line with Nikolai Ehlers and Cole Perfetti on either side of him. Nino Niederreiter, the former Islander, Adam Lowry, and Mason Appleton from left to right. That's your third line. Rasmus Kupari, Morgan Barron, and Alex Iafallo are the fourth forward trio. On defense, Josh Morrissey and Dylan DeMello are the top pair. Dylan Sandberg and Neil Pionk are the second pair. Logan Stanley and Colin Miller, the third pair. The goalies, Hellebuck and Eric Comrie. Did I mention that the Islanders are coming in off a back-to-back? The Jets haven't played since Saturday afternoon. They are going to be well rested, even if they do have to make the trip from Winnipeg, Manitoba to Long Island. The Islanders absolutely must stay out of the penalty box. They have got to match the Jets' size and speed, and they've got to play with intensity. And oh yeah, please do not. I know they're going to play Sorokin again, but you got a back-to-back coming up this weekend. I don't care who the backup goalie is. Put Mickey Mouse out there if you have to. Do not run Ilya Sorokin back into the ground. And this should be the last home game for Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri in an Islanders uniform. In fact, a smart GM would hold those guys out of this game so they don't get hurt and screw up everything before the trade deadline. I'm just not confident that it's going to happen. But the Islanders certainly will have their hands full against the Winnipeg Jets. Time now for our Islanders' birthday of the day. And, well, Wednesday will be the 48th birthday of former Islanders defenseman Brian Berard, the native of Woonsocket, Rhode Island. First-round pick, first overall by the Ottawa Senators back in 1995, but made his NHL debut with the Islanders in 1996-97 and had a great year, 8 goals, 48 points. Won the Calder Trophy that year as the NHL's top rookie with the Islanders. Went to 14 goals and 46 points his second year with the Islanders, and then was traded midway through the 98-99 season to Toronto. Went on to play for the Rangers, the Bruins, the Blackhawks, the Blue Jackets. Had a second stint with the Isles in 07-08, and then finished his career in the KHL. An eye injury suffered in the year 2000 really strongly affected his career. He had to sit out the 2000-2001 season as a result. And his play, while he was good after that, had some double-digit goal seasons after that, was not quite the same player he was before the injury. Finished his career with 76 goals and 323 points in 619 NHL games, at 500 penalty minutes, 2 goals, 10 points in 20 playoff games, none of those with the New York Islanders. One of his better games as an Islander, how about December 10th, 1996, Islanders hosting the then Phoenix Coyotes at the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum. And in this game, with the Islanders up ahead 3-1 on the power play, our Islanders' birthday of the day, Brian Berard sets up Brian Smolinski with a power play goal. Nicholas Anderson, the assist. That makes it 4-1 Islanders. And then Berard sets up Nicholas Anderson in the closing seconds of the second period. Claude Lapointe, the other assist. And Berard also scored a goal in the second period in the opening minute. Marty McGuinness with the assist. The Islanders go on to beat the Coyotes 8-2. They chased Nikolai Khabibulin while Tommy Salo of the Islanders made 28 saves. But for Brian Berard, a goal, 2 assists. He was a +4. He had 3 shots on goal and a 3-point game for the young defenseman. Brian Berard is our Islanders' birthday of the day. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast, bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter with the local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. If you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever it is that's on your mind. You can follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you can follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYRVSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long, and I am live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game. So join me for some instant insight and analysis. Everydayers, we are back tomorrow. We will have our key takeaways from the game against Winnipeg, plus our weekly farm report on all things Bridgeport Islanders. So make sure you join us for that. Always great to talk Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. Still hoping for some great things at the trade deadline, but not holding my breath. Let's see how it works out. This is a critical week for this team, and I'll say it again. Let's go, Islanders.